RAE, which is the relative age effect. This is a common practice in youth sport and is to basically used to group athletes. It may be in 1 year, so 11-year-olds, or sometimes in 2 years, so 11 to 12-year-olds. And this is how age groups and teams and leagues are often kind of put together. The intent of the chronological age groupings is to provide a developmentally appropriate instruction, fair competition, equal opportunity. However, differences in age between individuals born in the same calendar year, termed as the relative age, have been shown to have a major effect on the success that kids have and achieve in their sport. So, league eligibility may start from the 1st of January through to the 31st of December. So a player could have been born on the 1st of January is relatively older than the player born on the 31st of December, almost a year. So the cut-off date for age eligibility is December 31st. The athletes born later in the year, close to the cut-off date, are relatively younger than the athletes born at the start of the eligibility year. So potentially there could be a difference between up to 364 days. These age discrepancies create an issue called the relative age effect, where athletes are born earlier in the eligibility, are relatively older and are overrepresented in sports teams compared to those teams born later in the year, which are the eligibility relatively younger athletes. So basically there's there's been lots of research done on this to say that the kids who are at the start of the year, if it's done from January to December, obviously it may vary, that the kids who are born at the start of the year will be more developed, will be stronger, faster, so therefore maybe as a small child have a better cognitive development, better spatial awareness, or even have that mental capacity more than a child who's almost a year younger. So therefore more time is invested in the athlete or player or child, or they achieve more success and therefore stay. There's been lots of research done about this relative age effect. In particular, a study on youth elite male soccer players in Spain. So as you can see from the graph on screen here, there was more players involved in sport and in the sport and succeeding in the sport earlier in the year. You can see the decrease as you go from January to March through to that December or September period. This therefore demonstrates that there is a relative age effect of above and beyond the typical distribution of birth across the months of the year. Again, focusing on the same study, the relative age effect in youth soccer players in terms of looking at the positions, also there's a clear difference between the people who are involved and get involved in the sport from January to the kids and athletes involved in the sport later in the year. So there's more people succeeding, and as I said, it could be things like they're obviously physically stronger, they're a year advanced mentally, they develop further, they succeed and they've got more confidence and motivation to continue compared to a child who's maybe later in the year who may struggle. Obviously, this may be affected by your sport, or your structure that you play in. So if you played in a team that's from January to December cut-offs, then you're at an advantage if you're born in January. Whereas if you're in a team in a school environment, obviously you may be at an advantage if you are born in September because you are at the start of the school year. So it obviously is very dependent on the structure and playing pathway that you're involved in. So why does this relative age effect occur? I think it's just historical, but it's clearly a problem. It can impede personal development of the relatively younger athletes and overall talent development of the community and nation because we're not investing as much into the kind of people who are in the younger part of the year. It creates a structural inequality that benefits or hampers children based on their chance occurrence of the month in which they are born. Obviously, as I said, depending on which structure they're playing in. So why does it occur? It's basically as a result of a domino effect. So it looks, physical and cognitive maturation. So older kids are bigger, stronger, faster, and have more experience and more movement skills in playing games. The initial advantage turns to a culminating disadvantage as a subsequent domino falls into response from early maturation and development advantage into older athletes' experiences of more success in sport, and they've received more attention from coaches and are playing more playing time in a particular position. This allows them to qualify for more select teams with stronger competition and better instruction. So again, it's that domino effect. Based on this early success, older athletes develop that confidence, perceive they are more competent and have higher self-esteem and a greater motivation than the younger athletes who've maybe fallen farther and farther behind. So again, the domino effects, it impacts the negative side as well. You've almost got the domino effect going up, but also the domino effect going down for the younger performer. Children with a double whammy of a young boy who is relatively younger in terms of that relative age effect, and also a late maturer, well, does he even have a chance? You know, it's a double whammy almost of them having negative things and things that are going to impact their participation. So relatively younger athletes, like late maturing boys, are prime candidates become discouraged and drop out of youth sport. So as a coach, we need to consider what we can do to impact this. So how do we combat unfair relative age effect? Is there an alternative to chronological aging, eligibility cut-offs? Athletes could be classified in youth sports based on their biological age using some assessment methods. Possibly in larger cities or larger areas, there could be 2 or 3 leagues could be set up for different months of the year to lessen the differences. The most practical and most important way to combat is education and awareness, making sure people organising, delivering volunteers, coaches that fully understand the possible effects of the relative age in youth sport and understand how these philosophies and objectives and how they can impact and improve this. This requires the objective of helping each athlete develop their unique abilities regardless of their skill or maturation or development. It's to supersede the objective of playing only for the better but relative older kids to ensure winning. So not putting all the older kids or stronger or more mature kids on the field, it's giving everyone equal opportunities. Coaches who give players equal time and rotate positions at youth level are more likely to minimise that relative age effect on their teams. So committing to developmentally appropriate practice means understanding the relative age effects, but also the other maturational issues and influences on kids' participation in youth sport. It's really important we understand these concepts. Other key considerations in terms of involvement in youth sport is around burnout and injury. So there's key things we need to be aware of. Adolescent athletes may be at risk of restricted growth and delayed maturation when intense training is combined with insufficient energy intake. So overuse injuries, burnout. So typical injuries we can have in this growth period is stress fractures, growth platelet disorders, cracked knees, kneecaps, frayed tendon heels, back conditions brought on by excessive flexing, slipped vertebrae. And these things are often seen in adults, but we also need to consider how kids are developing and how the activities we design and do, how that's going to impact them. So here we've got an example of a case study. So it's a 13-year-old budding soccer star, practiced daily until she tore the anterior cruciate ligament in her knee. So the soccer player sought help after tearing their anterior cruciate ligament in her left knee. The injury occurred without contact from any other player as she was running down the field. She recently stopped playing other sports to concentrate on soccer. So the key point from this example is that she was a very good soccer player, but her hamstring muscles were much weaker than the rest of her leg structure. So her body had not been developed enough to play the sport of soccer. So again, the conditioning and the strength and flexibility and the physical conditioning we do with athletes is really important to ensure that they are developing properly into the sport and developing their muscle strength. So excessive stress and overload can cause, tendinitis, stress fractures, and lots of, various other conditions as a result of overexercise or overstress on this musculoskeletal system. So key things to consider: overuse injuries, repetitive loading. Contributing factors could be growth-related factors, growth cartilage, susceptible to stress. Physical injuries, rapid changes in relative length of bones and adaptive tendons. So maybe the bones have grown, but the muscle and tendons haven't developed yet, so it's been aware of these things. Intrinsic risk factors, so muscle imbalance, the example I've given of the hamstring and the rest of the muscle not as overdeveloped for that hamstring. And you see this quite prevalently in soccer, and this is why there's lots of knee injuries. Psychological factors, so maturation, self-esteem, and there's also some extrinsic factors: too rapid training and progression, inappropriate equipment, footwear, incorrect sporting technique, and even wrong surfaces or adult peer pressure. So there's lots of reasons why injuries and problems occur within children and youth. So what should I be looking out for? These growing pains and some education around this: lack of flexibility, reduced strength, diminished coordination of movement, diminished endurance or diminished balance and ability. So it's making sure we're aware of these key things that are going on. And it's not just being aware of growth, maturation, the relative age effect, but also, how injury and as a result of the things that we do with our athletes could impact their development. So it's around lack of coach education, coaches not being aware of this, the conditioning and training errors, inadequate pre-participation and physical examination, and maybe parents and coaches being too pushy on their athletes and performance.